Good day everyone. So for today's video we will tackling about the types of transfer and its condition and the principles of transfer. So what are we waiting for? Let's do this. Types of transfer and its condition. Transfer of learning occurs when people apply informations, strategies, and skills they have learned to a new situation or context. Transfer is not a discrete activity, but is rather an integral part of the learning process. Researchers attempt when and how transfer occurs and to offer strategies to improve transfer. Transfer learning is the application of knowledge gained from completing one task to solve a different but related problems. To measure the effectiveness of transfer learning techniques, three common indicators are used. One is measuring whether performing the target task is achievable using only the transferred knowledge. Second is measuring the amount of time it takes to learn the target task using knowledge gained from transferred learning versus how long it would take to learn without it. Third is whether the final performance of the task learned via transfer learning is comparable to completion of the original task without the transfer of knowledge. Transfer of taxonomies. Transfer of learning can be cognitive, socio-emotional, or motor. The following table presents the different types of transfer. Types: positive. Characteristics: positive transfer occurs when prior learning assists new learning. Negative. Negative transfer occurs when prior learning hinders or interferes with new learning. Zero. Zero transfer occurs when prior learning has no influence on new learning. Near. Much overlap between situations. Original and transfer contexts are highly similar. Far. Little overlap between situations. Original and transfer contexts are highly dissimilar. Literal. Intact skill or knowledge transfers to a new task. Figural. Use of some aspects of general knowledge to think or learn about a problem, such as with analogies or metaphors. Low road. Transfer of well-established skills in spontaneous and possibly automatic functions. High road. Transfer involving abstraction through an explicit conscious formulations of connections between situations. Backward reaching. Abstracting behavior and cognitions from the learning context to one or more potential transfer contexts. Forward reaching. Abstracting in the transfer context features of the situations that allow for integration with previously learned skills and knowledge. Learners can increase transfer through effective practice and by mindfully abstracting knowledge. Abstraction is the process of examining our experiences for similarities. Methods for abstracting knowledge include seeking the underlying principles in what is learned, creating models and identifying analogies and metaphors, all of which assist with creating associations and encouraging transfer. Types of transfer. Positive transfer means that practice on one activity results in improvements to another activity. Two hypotheses that have been proposed to why it occurs. First, the identical elements theory proposed that positive effect increase as a function of similarities of the components of motor skills and the context in which they are performed. Second, the transfer appropriate processing theory states that the amount of positive transfer related to the similarity of the cognitive processing. activity involved in the two situations. For example, an experienced discus thrower usually learns the rotational shot put quickly because of the similarities both in movement, qualities, and mental processing. Negative transfer means the practice on one activity interferes with the performance of another activity. Negative effects occurs when two skills are performed in a similar environmental context, but the movement characteristics are different. Two situations that are especially vulnerable involve a change in a spatial locations and or the timing of a movement. Fortunately, negative transfer appears to be rare and temporary in motor skill learning. Beginners experience negative transfer because they are initially confused by subtle changes to a familiar skill. As a coach, you may have to encourage athletes who are experiencing temporary negative effects so that they do not become discouraged early in learning a new skill. Zero transfer occurs when previous experience has no influence on performance of a new skill or change context of an existing skill. For example, previous swimming experience should not influence learning to snow ski. When transfer of learning concerns the same skill performed with different limbs, it is called bilateral transfer. It occurs because the learner already understands what is required to achieve the goal of the skill. Another explanation is that a generalized motor program can be applied to performance on the unpracticed limb. Coaching tips for applying the transfer principle. First, identify similarities between previously learned skills and new skills. Second, maximize the similarity between training activities and competitive conditions. Third, provide adequate experience with fundamental skills before advancing to more complex skills. Fourth, develop more general capabilities, such as critical gross motor skills that apply to a variety of spot tasks. For example, in basketball, the vertical jump is a key element of rebounding and blocking shots. In education, types of transfer means referring of target knowledge and skills that can be applied to another. It is sought for many purposes, which can play a crucial role in life. It should attempt techniques from outcomes requiring the best good options. Rather, it provides independence, influencing prominent behaviors in lives. The foundation of types of transfer is to processing relevant informations, knowledge, skills that tends to emphasize learners' performance. The characteristics of transfer of learning is purposeful, utilization of previous knowledge, helpful in adjustment, utilization of mental capacities, development of insights, and the effect. Next, as we move on to the principles of transfer. There are many kinds or types of principles of transfer. The transfer principle suggests that learning and performing one activity affects the performance of related skills and activities. This principle is essential for designing practice strategies that have greatest impact on competitive performance. Transfer of learning is defined as the influence of previous experiences on learning new skills or performing skills in new contexts. According to the transfer principle, effects may be positive, negative, or zero when there is no influence at all. The goal for sport coaches is to select practice activities and use instructional techniques that optimize positive transfer to the competitive arena. 10 ways to improve transfer of learning. With this in mind, here are some tips for taking what you learn in educational settings and applying it in the workplace and other areas of your life. Focus on the relevance of what you're learning. Research shows that when learning is relevant, Students are able to connect what they're learning to what they already know and build new neural connections and long-term memory storage. Second, take time to reflect and self-explain. Before you can transfer knowledge to new contexts, you need to understand the concept inside and out, which is why it's important to take time for reflection and self-explanation. Research shows that self-explanation can help you to identify any incorrect assumptions, lead to a deeper understanding of material, that ultimately promote knowledge transfer. Third, use a variety of learning media. Another way to facilitate the transfer of learning to new contexts is to use as many different learning media as possible, from text and imagery to video and audio. Research shows that using pictures, narration, and text can help prevent your cognitive resources from becoming overloaded and improve learning transfer. One study found that learners who use relevant visuals were able to retain more information and scored higher on transferred tests than those who use only text. They also perceived the content as easier to learn when visuals were used. Fourth, change things up as often as possible. It's easy to get stuck in with your learning by studying around the same time, in the same location, and using the same study strategies every day. But when you get used to constantly studying in the same way, it can be difficult to transfer the knowledge you acquired to new environments and situations. Fifth, identify any gaps in your knowledge. Without a complete understanding of the concept or information you're learning, transferring it to the new context will be more difficult. With this in mind, it's important to identify any gaps in your knowledge and then work on strengthening your weaker areas. One excellent way to do this is through practice testing. 6. Establish clear learning goals. Establishing clear learning goals will give you a better understanding of what you're trying to get out of your learning and how you might later transfer that knowledge and apply it in your work or personal life. If you know what the expected learning outcomes are, you'll also be able to focus on the right material. 7. Practice generalizing. Generalizing is the ability to transfer the knowledge or skills you gain in one setting to a new one. It's all about seeing the bigger picture and looking for more widely applicable rules, ideas, or principles. For example, a child that learns to stack wooden blocks could generalize that skill and later use it to build more elaborate creations using Lego bricks. 8. Make your learning social. This gives you the opportunity to explain what you're learning is in your own words and apply your knowledge to new situations. Research also shows that collaborative learning promotes engagement and benefits long-term retention. 9. Use analogies and metaphors. Analogies and metaphors are great for drawing on your prior knowledge or experience and making associations between seemingly unrelated ideas. The last but not the least is the number 10. Find daily opportunities to apply what you've learned. Applying what you've learned at school to real-world problems takes a lot of practice. So it's important to look for opportunities to apply what you've learning in your everyday life. For example, if you have been studying a new language, make a conscious effort to remember the foreign names of different objects around the house when you get up in the morning. If you just attended a customer service training course, try to employ one of new strategies you learned about when dealing with customers on your first day back to work. What are the concepts of transfer of learning? Transfer learning is the application of knowledge gained from completing one task to help solve a different but related problem. The development of algorithms that facilitate transfer learning processes has become a goal of machine learning technicians as they strive to make machine learning as human-like as possible. Machine learning algorithms are typically designed to address isolated tasks. Through transfer learning methods are developed to transfer knowledge from one or more of these source tasks to improve learning in a related target task. The goal of this transfer of related strategies is to help evolve machine learning to make it as efficient as human learning. Transfer learning theory. During transfer learning, knowledge is leveraged from a source task to improve learning in a new task. If the transfer method ends up decreasing performance of the new task, it is called a negative transfer. A major challenge when developing transfer methods is ensuring positive transfer between related tasks, while still avoiding negative transfer between less related tasks. When applying knowledge from one task to another, the original task characteristics are usually mapped onto those of the other to specify correspondences. A human typically provides this mapping, but methods are evolving that perform the mapping automatically. What are the conditions of transfer of learning? Factors that can affect transfer conclude context and degree of original learning. How will the learner acquire the knowledge? Similarity, commonalities between original learning and new, such as environment and other memory cues. Critical attributes, characteristics that make something unique. 5 principles of learning are participation, repetition, relevance, transference, feedback. First, participation. Learning should permit and encourage active participation of the learner. Participation improves motivation and apparently engages more senses that reinforce the learning process. As a result of participation, people learn more quickly and retain that learning longer. For example, most people never forget how to ride a bicycle because they actively participated in the learning process. The learning activities should be experiential rather than just informational. Therefore, the trainers should arrange the physical surroundings to facilitate small group interaction and promote the sharing of ideas. Number 2. Repetition. An important principle of the learning is to provide the learner with the opportunity for practice and repetition. To gain the full benefit of training, learned behaviors must be overlearned to ensure smooth performance and minimum of forgetting of a later date. Proficiency in learning and retaining new skills is improved when individuals visualize themselves performing the new behavior. Relevance. Learning is helped when the material to be learned is meaningful. The learning should be problem-centered rather than content-centered. People are motivated to learn when training is immediately relevant to help them solve a current problem. Learning something just because someone says it is important is not as motivating. Fourth is transference. Because the training occurs in a special environment, an important question to ask is whether learning will transfer to actual job situation. Transfer of training occurs when trainees can apply the knowledge and skills learned in training course to their jobs. If the learning in one setting does not transfer to the actual job situation, the training has failed. 3 transfer training situations are possible. First, positive transfer of training, when the training activities enhance performance in the new situation. Second, negative transfer of training, when the training activities inhibit performance in a new situation. And third, no observable effect of training. Number 5, feedback. Feedback gives learners information on their progress. Performance feedback is a necessary prerequisite for learning. Feedback improves performance not only by helping learners correct their mistakes, but also by providing reinforcement for learning. An effective knowledge transfer usually looks something like this. First, identify whom in the organization you need to gather knowledge. Second, have them share that information in a way that you can capture. Third, execute the transfer. Fourth, measure and evaluate a knowledge transferred. Summary. Transfer is the process of applying one's knowledge and skills to new situations, a central goal of education. Even though all learning involves some degree of transfer, research shows that applying knowledge effectively and flexibly is difficult. Students may be able to demonstrate knowledge in class and on exams, but not be able to apply their knowledge in other contexts where it is appropriate. Transfer tends to fail when students have poor understanding of acquired knowledge and are not aware of how, where, and when their acquired knowledge is appropriate. Principles of transfer. Acquire a large primary knowledge base in the area in which transfer is acquired. Acquire some level of knowledge base in subjects outside the primary area. Understand what transfer of learning is and how it works. Understand the history in the areas that transfer is wanted. Acquire motivation, or more specifically a spirit of transfer. Through transfer learning, methods are developed to transfer knowledge from one or more of these source tasks to improve learning in a related target task. The goal of this transfer of learning strategies is help evolve machine learning, make it as efficient as human learning. Hope you learned something new in this lesson. Thanks for watching. And if you have some additional information gathered, don't hesitate to add on it at the comment section below in this video.